Game 2 of the World Championship was a disaster for Ding Liren. It was a crushing defeat handed out to him in a line where he surprised Nepo in the opening. Ding played d4. Nepo replied with knight f6, c4, e6, and knight f3. Black plays d5, and here Ding surprised Nepo with a particular move, h3, throwing Nepo out of the books. It's not a particularly good move, unfortunately, because Black has got variety of options here to choose from. This was a move that was suggested by Richard Rapport, Ding Liren's second, and he told so in the press conference afterwards. So this move allows Nepo to choose from a different variety of options. He can go for Queen's Gambit accepted, he can go for b6, and he can just develop normally and get a position where h3 is not useful for white. So actually, Nepo chooses to go for Queen's Gambit accepted lines, takes on c4, and after e3, he goes c5, the most principled approach. Even a move like b5 is possible. It's a little bit dubious, but here because white has spent a tempo, black can go for lines like that. But Nepo goes for the most centered approach, which is c5, striking at the center, giving back the pawn. And now a6. He's preparing b5 and expansion on the queen side. Castles, knight c6, knight c3, b5. Now bishop retreats back, bishop b7 and a4. The pawn pushes forward, knight e4, and now knight a5. A very nice move. Preparing c4 and attacking the knight. This is the first critical moment of the game. Ding Liren has two choices. Knight takes c5 and knight takes f6. Which one is the better option here for white? So Ding chose to play knight takes knight. Knight takes c5 was slightly a better option for white. So after knight takes c5, what would happen? Bishop takes, d takes, and castles. A position like this would arise. This was a bit more manageable because he doesn't have to worry about the avalanche of pawns on the queen side. The c5 pawn is weak, and Nepo would probably pick it back with a move like knight d5. But even after that gets taken, this position is manageable. Yes, there is a bishop handed out on the long diagonal, but there is no tension with the pawns. So he could have chosen that. Instead, he went for knight takes f6, and now Nepo played a very nice move. He did not do the automatic queen takes f6. He played the much more aggressive and the much more position friendly. Like this position allows him to take these liberties. He played g takes f6, a very nice idea which we have seen before in different world championship matches, including the Kramnik Anand match. So rook g8 is the plan and use the g file for black's advantage. And black's king is probably going to castle long. So after that, Ding played e4, useful move, closing down the bishop. And now c4. The pawn storm has started. Bishop moves back. Now black has got this nice little position with the queen defending the a5 knight and the knight defending the c4 pawn. And as long as this stays, it's difficult for white to find good play. Nepo played queen c7. Everything is pretty harmonious here. And at any moment after developing and castling, these pawns can go forward as well. Now Ding is under pressure. The position is comfortable for black. Black can just castle long, play rook g8, play bishop d6, and even play f5, opening up the bishop. And at any moment choose between b3 and c3. A very comfortable position. Ding played bishop d2 and rook g8 by Nepo. Rook c1 and Nepo just castles. The king is slightly weak here. There's so much air around the king, but white's pieces are in no position to make any threats, let alone any attack. Here, bishop d3 was chosen by Ding. Of course, you can't take it because the pawn is pinned, but Nepo just calmly moves the king out. Again, this structure is still very solid. If white can break this structure somehow, then white would be in the game. But as long as this stays, black is totally comfortable with the position. And now rook e1. And this seems to be the losing move. After rook e1, black gets a lot of counterplay with his next move. And Nepo found that next move. Here, instead of rook e1, the better option would have been something like bishop e3 or just king h1, moving out of the line of the rook. The problem with rook e1 is now comes f5. A beautiful move. The idea being it's basically opening up the bishop, the monster on the long diagonal. Now there is a nice line here. If you take the pawn, then the idea is rook takes d4. And if knight takes rook, then comes rook g2, check. Of course, you can't go here because of mate. King f1. Now there's a forced mate in 3. Rook takes, king takes, queen comes in, and then bishop h6 checkmate. So ideas like this are possible after f5. Now Ding played bishop c2, and Nepo decided to bring the knight back to c6, putting pressure on the sender, on the d4 pawn. Here there is a very computer-like move f6. What is the idea behind this move? It's almost impossible to play it if you don't see that the idea is queen g7. You're stopping e5, and you can play bishop d6 without worrying about e5, first of all. Second, you're preparing queen g7 with a load of pressure on the king. That is why this is the best option, this f6. But then Nepo doesn't find that. He plays the second best move, knight c6. Now bishop g5. And this is a big moment in the game because Nepo has a lot of options, but he chooses the best one. He goes for it. He plays rook takes bishop, sacrificing an exchange. What does he get in return? He gets a d4 pawn. So he gets a pawn for the exchange. And the problem for white is he cannot find any useful moves. So it's barely a sacrifice. As long as black keeps all the pieces active, it's difficult for white to find moves. Now you can also take on e4. The threat right now after knight takes, this happened. Threat is at the very least knight b3, attacking the queen and getting back the exchange. So now queen has to move. And what can white do? You can play rook d1, all those normal moves are possible, but black will just play bishop d6, and then try to play c3. So black's plans are very simple: bishop d6, rook g8, and c3 or b3. So here Nepo played pawn f6, attacking the knight. One of the lines, the best move here is bishop to c5, basically, allowing queen f7. But then the plan is queen f4. So basically, black ambushed white into going there. White's pieces are over there, but now there are threats on the king. f2 is weak, e4 is weak. Once the knight moves, once this happens, everything becomes weak. For example, here white's best option would be something like coming back with the queen. And now we can play b3. And if bishop moves, there comes knight c2, unleashing the queen and the bishop. So bishop c5 is not easy to find, but Nepo plays something good as well. He plays f6, the second best move. Now the knight went back, and then Nepo took on c2. Rook takes back, bishop takes c4. So he got 2 pawns for the exchange, and black is completely winning here. Computer gives as good as -6 evaluation in this position, where black is down an exchange, but has the bishop pair and these nice pawns, and all the pieces are active actually. So now rook d2 was played. Ding wants to exchange of the rooks and somehow some hope of getting the queen in. But Nepo doesn't allow that. He plays bishop d6. Now after king h1, this is the time Nepo decides to run with the pawn, c3. And now white is completely busted because this runaway pawn is too dangerous. Square is covered by the bishop, c1 is covered by the queen. So what happened next was he took take, rook moved to d4, pawn c2, threatening pawn c1, and now Ding held on with queen h6, stopping the pawn. Now almost everything wins for black. You can even play rook c8, threatening to promote. But Nepo finds the best move. He plays e5. Now basically the rook is trapped. It can't go to any squares here, and if it goes to d2, then promotion. So you'll have to give up material, give the material back. Black will be 2 pawns up, and this monster stays along with this monster. So the position was completely gone, and here Ding resigned, giving Nepomniatchchi an early lead in the match. And they go into the rest day with Nepo leading 1.5.5.